Green Education is excited to partner with SWEEP to offer the series of informational sessions on SWEEP Standard. Today, our speakers will discuss the ReTRAC Municipal Measurement Program and the importance of consistent definitions and reporting and in the industry level. Our speakers today will be Rob Watson, Chris Ronson, and Will Zurier. Tell us a little bit something about yourself, Rob.
Thanks, Edgar. Not much to say. I've been in market transformation for about 35 years. I sort of cut my teeth developing the lead standard, and as I got more involved with the waste industry about 10 years ago, I saw that it was ripe for a lead-like standard, and so I pulled together a bunch of people smarter than me in the industry and created several committees, and now we're about to launch our pilot program of SWEEP. Looking forward to working with many of our attendees on making SWEEP better, which you can do being a member and also engaging in the pilot program. So as Edgar noted, it's very important to have consistent definitions and reporting at an industry level. As Drucker famously said, you can't manage what you don't measure, but you can't measure what you don't define. And one of the issues that we found in looking at the waste industry is that they're not a consistent set of definitions, and that the reporting is, a lot of people report different things in different ways. And so it's very hard to get a real sense of where the industry is in overall performance. So that's one of the things SWEEP is hoping to do. We're very excited to be partnered with the Municipal Measurement Program, which has made a fantastic start in the recycling area. We look to build on that and continue our partnership and expand it and the amount of data that's collected. Collecting data can be a pain in the neck. And so what we've been trying to do at SWEEP is to have, again, a series of simple but robust definitions, and then underlying that with a strong foundation of relatively simple to do data collection and reporting tools. So we'll talk a little bit about how we've are in the process of regularizing data collection and having consistent, not necessarily one size fits all, but consistent definitions for different activities and different materials across the industry. And then, how we're trying to take those definitions, both in terms of calculation methodologies and definitions, and put them in simple forms that can then be used to report your progress as you move towards SWEEP certification. Next slide. So some of you were on the webinar last time, and if you haven't seen this webinar, I invite you to go to the SWEEP website under the webinars tab and take a look at the information that I'm summarizing here. The numbers collected by the Environmental Protection Administration are in the 270 million ton range, whereas pretty much every other industry analysis shows waste generation upwards of 430 to 450 million tons. And it's our opinion at SWEEP that you cannot solve a 450 million ton problem with a 270 million ton solution. So it's very important that we understand what our waste generation numbers actually are. In addition, we don't really have a good sense of what's in the waste. EPA has done a decent job with that, but if you look at waste characterization studies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, they're all different. The top level categories are all different. The categorization of plastics is all different. Paper has a number of different categorizations. So you have issues where the same material is being described in very different ways. And as a result, you are not able to put together a set of consistent data between jurisdictions. It makes characterization at the national level very difficult, and comparisons between jurisdictions very difficult. Moreover, increasingly, as the waste stream diversifies, we're finding very large catch-all categories of other. And at the same time, we're finding waste diversion goals in the 75% to 90% range. And if you're in the upper levels of that, you don't know what 25 to 30% of your waste is with any meaningful detail. It's very difficult to design programs to hit those targets. So what SWEEP is trying to do is eliminate the Tower of Babel to a certain degree. We will not have the answer coming right out of the box, but hopefully we will have an 80% answer that we will be able to refine further and define as we go along. And then, creating a series of consistent reporting tools for waste assessments. I've seen in some solid waste plans data showing that literally 10 times more metal is collected for recovery than supposedly is generated in the sector. So clearly there's something going on there, and there are other conflicts and data, confused data that we've seen in other jurisdictions. Next slide. So we want to be able to have a consistent set of diversion rate calculations, a consistent set of material characterizations, and then this way we can have an accurate assessment of what our actual waste generation and diversion is. Too often the definition of diversion is gerrymandered to basically exclude materials that might be diverted elsewhere but are not diverted in this particular jurisdiction. And so we get a Lake Wobegon effect where everybody is reporting above average waste diversion numbers, which obviously statistically can't happen. And then furthermore, we know almost nothing about commercial waste characteristics. Very, very rarely do waste characterization surveys address commercial waste. And so, and sometimes where they do, the data is often a decade old. And this goes back to the adage, you need to be able to know what's in your waste if you're going to manage it and divert it properly. And so working with ReTRAC Connect and the Municipal Measurement Program, SWEEP seeks to bring more consistency and transparency to the industry. We believe that there is significant value in discarded materials that are not properly captured, largely because the structure of the industry is not designed to capture that value. So hopefully through a sustainable materials management approach, we can get consistent data, can measure and manage these materials properly and have a sustainable future. So I'm going to ask Chris Ronson, who is our partner on this and heading up business development for Emerge Knowledge, which is behind the ReTRAC Connect platform, to introduce himself and tell us a little bit more about the MMP.
Well, what is there to tell you about myself? It's I can tell you that I'm currently away from my booth at the State of Texas, the STARS Virtual Summit. It has been definitely weird transition to virtual conferences for me. I'm a guy who attends at least 10 conferences in different states throughout the year, and talking about what I'm talking about today and changing that approach and doing this all virtually has its positives, and being able to do two things at the same time has its challenges as well. So I'm really excited for this opportunity to be here, share with you a bit about the municipal measurement program. It sounds like, based on the poll, that there's some of you that this is new for, so that's great. I'm going to walk you through a bit about the municipal measurement program, what it is, how it works, and talk about how ReTRAC and our team are working with Sweep and their team to ensure that our standardization efforts are aligned, and also kind of working in the same direction, because, you know, this is a very big challenge, and it can't all be solved at once, and it can't all be solved by just one person. So really, really thankful for this opportunity. And right, so I always like to start with a picture with my slides. Standardization is a journey and not a destination. We've learned this over the 15 plus years we've been working towards standardization as an organization. I've been with the company that developed ReTRAC Connect and the municipal measurement program since 2008, and really this truly has been a journey for us, in that we work with many local government agencies, counties, states and provinces, and national organizations like the EPA towards helping streamline their data collection efforts. And it all started with what we now call ReTRAC Classic, where we really custom developed every single program for each of our clients, and that was great in some respects. Everyone got exactly what they were looking for as far as compliance reporting, facility haulers reporting their material management data on whatever quarterly, annual basis. But one of the challenges with that is that, you know, it's all very siloed. There's no really way to aggregate that data across the board, and it takes a lot of time, and any move towards standardization is kind of set back by doing those custom programs one by one. After ReTRAC Classic, we moved on to ReTRAC Connect, which is our current software platform that many of you are likely familiar with. But still, a lot of the programs in there are you know, utilizing starting templates, but also, you know, very much customized within the programs themselves. What we found over the years, and the state measurement program supported by the EPA and built for and by the state governments, starting in the Southeast and kind of expanding to over 40 of the states participating on an annual basis. What we learned is that with that particular program in ReTRAC, we tried to standardize the way data was captured and reported at the state level across the country. And there's very good participation on an annual basis. The participation is strong in the committees that help review the feedback on an annual basis, and making sure that there's apples to apples comparisons, but also consistent definitions in that program. But we knew that there was a piece missing. We knew that collecting the data at the state level is great, but then figuring out how to standardize the way data is collected at the municipal level is also super important. We've been doing measurement workshops at Resource Recycling every year, the conference, and participating in the Measurement Matters Summit in 2018 in Chattanooga, Tennessee, where there's leaders across the country and across the industry that joined together to start talking much more strongly about consistent measurement and standardization. And lots of, like, the list of challenges was very, very long. Definitely some kind of tactical, practical decisions were made in that meeting, but at the end of the day, we knew that there needed to be a technology platform to help institutionalize some of those standards at the municipal level. And so we set to work and started creating the municipal measurement program, which I'm going to talk about today. But that's a great start, but it's truly not just a destination. We know that now that the MMP, as I'll refer to it, is launched and live, we're starting to get municipal level data on an annual basis, but initiatives like Sweep and the certification program really help get a much more comprehensive look at particular systems and the infrastructure that's out there, and we saw this as such a great opportunity to work alongside SWEEP to ensure that that standardization was consistent and complemented this annual data that we're capturing at the municipal level. So tons of benefits of standardization, including you're all working off the common set of definitions. When we built the municipal measurement program, it was in beta mode, and we were working with communities one-on-one, trying to ensure that the definitions that were put in place, they were grounded in a lot of the work that we had done over the years, working one-on-one with the communities. But this needs to be applicable to over 80% of the country. And so there's a lot of differences between a town in Colorado and a town in Connecticut. And while there are similarities, all speaking the same language is challenging, and we knew that. So we knew that we needed to dig deep, make sure that the information that we're presenting in the data collection forms was understandable, not overly cumbersome, because this is a voluntary program that that needs to work, but also make sure that there was a lot of benefit for municipalities. So and that includes those apples to apples comparisons. So being able to do benchmarking, analytical reports within the program was key. We needed to be able to present information within the program for any municipality that joins to be able to use for policymaking, goal development, and that becomes a lot easier once you have standardized forms and you're collecting data in the similar ways. We didn't want to reinvent the wheel, which is, again, one of the core reasons that we're making sure that we're aligned with SWEEP on the certification program. And the ability to trend data over time is also, of course, really something that you begin to be able to start doing once you have that consistent way of reporting and measuring. One of the challenges that we have faced is trending data over time in the scenarios where data might, you might want to improve those standards, you might want to improve the definitions, and so making sure that any tweaks you make to the program don't fundamentally change the data that has already been collected. That's a key component that we're still working through and making sure that we do it and grow the program in a positive direction. So I talked a lot about the reasons behind standardization. And so what I really want to share here is what the municipal measurement program is. So it's a program that was designed by us here at ReTRAC Connect and the Recycling Partnership, which many of you might be familiar with, a national nonprofit really focused on improving recycling across the United States and helping improve curbside programs. And we both set out to create this centralized database of municipal program information that government agencies, like many of you on this call today, can use to improve recycling in the country. The goal was to standardize measurement, actually use that data and turn it into knowledge that you can make decisions and ultimately transform recycling systems. It works in the way that municipalities join this municipal measurement program. So if you're a city or a town or a village that and you represent that particular entity, you can join the municipal measurement program for free and complete a range of program assessment surveys. Once you've done that, you gain access to a suite of reports designed to help you improve their program performance. And while some of the municipalities that are already reporting to the MMP, what that means is that counties and states can now start looking to the MMP for access to that information. And so we've developed a standardized solution to help give access to those counties and states rather than needing to kind of start a program from scratch. What that helps is create this centralized database with those standards that are implemented and a consistent way of communicating with these municipalities on an ongoing basis. Like I said, it is an annual reporting frequency, so we tried to make the application process very simple. It is currently just specifically for municipalities. If you're a county that's listening in right now, we're actually undertaking a research project to find ways to have counties report into the MMP as well, because we understand that municipalities are not the only ones who run programs, but in order to expand the program in a consistent way and a manageable way, we had to start somewhere. But ultimately, if you represent a municipality and you have the authority to report on their behalf, we encourage you to apply today. It's free and very easy. Once you're in there, you're going to gain access to 3 core surveys, one asking about information about kind of high-level information about your municipality, your public education outreach programs and activities, and then curbside program assessment and drop-off program assessment forms that are capturing information about a number of different things. So as I've mentioned with about your municipality, you're capturing also waste management challenges, your demographic information, and some of that's utilized in some of the recommendations reports that are available within the program. The curbside program assessment asks about your solid waste collection program, your residential single-family curbside recycling program. It captures information about multifamily programs, organics collection programs, and then just make sure that we know who's filling out the survey itself. With each of these pages, we've built the MMP in a way that really is streamlined for someone, for a city or town that might only have, let's say, their solid waste collection program and single family curbside program. If you don't have an organics collection program, you're easily able to just say, no, that we don't have that at this time. That's good information. Understanding the lay of the land across the country, understanding who has organics collection programs and who don't, which ones don't, can be really beneficial. And it also helps when you start comparing and contrasting as a municipality to other programs that are in the system, looking at what has been diverted in your municipality compared to another program. If you're just looking at diversion rate and not understanding the components of that diversion rate, you're not getting the whole picture. So we try to bring that front and center with each of the questions that we ask within the program itself. The drop-off program asks about drop-off sites, the materials accepted, whether the locations are staffed or unstaffed, and ultimately tonnage information for both the curbside and drop-off programs to help generate a lot of those analytical reports. So in addition to the standardized nature of the surveys, which allows you to, on an annual basis, pull forward many of the questions and answers that you've provided in the prior year and just check to make sure that's still consistent. Now you're able to start monitoring annual trends. We're in the second full year of the MMP. And so if you go in as a municipality today and start filling out your 2018 data and then your 2019 data, you're able to start looking at those annual trends over time. With the analytical reports that, again, are completely free within this program. You're able to also now benchmark your community against other communities in the MMP, and those are also available for free in the analytics area. And then a recommendations report, which digs into how you filled out the MMP itself and provides recommendations. So if you find yourself struggling with contamination, the program will recommend resources directly tied to how you filled out the surveys. The analytical reports include that program recommendations report I just described and many, many others. The economics benefits of recycling report, which is based on the US EPA's Recycling Economic Information Report, or REI report, if you're familiar with it. This report was created to increase the understanding of the economic implications of material reuse and recycling. And so, of course, by recovering these valuable materials, recycling creates jobs, it builds infrastructure and contributes to the US economy. And a municipality can now generate this report to see how their recycling efforts translate into job creation, estimated wages, and tax revenues. You can see it's a infographic style report. It's a click of a button as soon as you put the data into the system. So it really encourage you to check that one out. The environmental benefits of recycling reports based on the EPA's reform model report. And so that's going to convert your diversion efforts into metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent and ultimately to passenger vehicles taken off the road or wind turbines installed. And looking at this information, of course, it's not going to be the best fit for everyone who's looking at really wanting just tonnage numbers, but this is a different way of looking at information. And traditionally, these reports can be really challenging to generate because you need to keep the conversion factors updated. If the EPA's WAR model factors change or new materials are added, it's complex calculations. So we've tried to build that in directly into the program so we keep that up to date when and if it changes. The data verification component, and I think the sweep folks will definitely kind of repeat this in the fact that quality of data is super important when you start talking about standardization. Just because it's all in the same format and using the same definitions, there's still a level of verification and follow-up required for this data. And so we built into the MMP a review process where the data responses are reviewed at the end of each year. And depending on whether a county or state is actually accessing the data in the MMP, if they are, then they provide that first check. And if not, the recycling partnership has been reviewing the numerical responses that need further clarification before their market is verified. And once they're verified, that they can be used in the benchmarking reports. They can be utilized in kind of this industry analysis that is extremely important, and sometimes is taken, as I believe Rob mentioned, you're looking at some of this stale data that might be 10 or 15, 20 years old sometimes. So having current, recent, accurate information to reference is extremely valuable, and we're excited about it. Lots of participation across the country. If you are in a municipality that is in one of the gray states, that means that we don't have at least one municipality participating. So regardless, we'd love you to join the program today to check it out, look at the forums, and access all those analytical reports. Some insights from year one. We have 75% of communities indicated that they had an outreach budget for recycling at all. So that was good. An average of 95 cents per household served. Again, some of this data is based on, well, all this data is based on what has been put into the municipal measurement program. So some of the keeners that are going in there, we anticipate that there's a stronger majority of those that actually have these programs, so they have time to dedicate to this. And so we're working on also finding ways to work with counties and regional authorities that might support their municipality programs, and they might be able to report on behalf of those municipalities. But ultimately, there's lots of information gained even in that year one. 45% of municipalities were encouraged to learn about set-out rates. They were recommended because they had identified that they didn't know how to calculate that set-out rate, or they didn't understand the best way to go about doing that. And so that's very encouraging for us that those resources are being presented, and that hopefully in the following years they're able to, for example, with the 75% of participating communities needing to invest in contamination control, understanding how that changes over time within the MMPs can be really exciting. We've been working with lots of organizations, including SWEEP, as I mentioned, and ultimately aligning with SWEEP. There are tons of opportunities to support standardization. The common definitions is the obvious one. We've been working with Rob and Will and their entire team to help ensure that the definitions, where applicable within the SWEEP certification standards, are aligned, that they are common and understandable and not reinventing the wheel. We wanted them to be complementary data sets, not competing. And so we see that certification for a municipality might be the next step of a participating MMP member. And so I think that over time, what our goal will be to help streamline that reporting process, hopefully a direct tie-in with credits that can be achieved. And with that streamlined reporting experience, the goal is to have the SWEEP certification program reporting in ReTRAC Connect, so using the same platform, having that data reported, and all the efficiencies that can be gained by having it all under one roof. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. And I'm going to hand it over to Will. And Will, how about you tell folks a little bit about yourself?
Thank you very much for that. We'll wait for Edgar to be able to switch over to the other PowerPoint really quickly. But in the meantime, my name is Will Zurier. I'm the program associate here at the SWEEP Standard. Started off as an intern in 2018, and now I'm program associate in 2020. Really has allowed me to grow with the company and really see, all the dynamics that are required to get to the certain stage that we are and what we need to do to get there. So I've kind of had an all-encompassing role, whether it's kind of being the salesman and promoting Sweep and getting materials together, or are we going to conferences and pitching and working the booths? Are we building out materials? Are we making the certification manual? All these kind of different aspects, what goes into creating a business and making a business function, I kind of handle a little bit of everything. Yep, right now I graduated from Wake Forest in 2018 with a bachelor's in environmental economics, and now I'm currently pursuing my master's in science and sustainability management at Columbia, where I have a focus in sustainable materials management there. Next slide, please. So we'll start off by saying we'll definitely touch on a lot of the points that Chris touched on earlier, but I will put the real Sweep spin on it. So here our number one goal is making a very complex standard as simple as possible. When you first look at Sweep, it is a 120-page document that is compiled of 50 credits that range from 4 different performance categories, ranging from policy all the way through to disposal. So that can be fairly overwhelming in understanding how spread out and how many different parties are involved with the waste management process. Collecting data and understanding how it all works together is very important. So at this time, we've kind of been condensing while also expanding our forms so that they cover all stages of this and that they can cover any really entity that wants to get involved. I know Chris earlier was talking about how they're working on it from a county level, and that is something too that Sweep is focusing on, and where we have a credit that calls for waste characterization studies, and we're looking for, creating a waste shed approach in terms of so we can loosen or lessen the economic burden of performing one of those and get as many people to submit accurate data as possible. So overall, this is going to aid our certification process. This is one of many pieces that will go into it. So it will start off by Sweep members essentially taking pilot cities through a gap analysis to understand how they line up with the Sweep standard. And then we will start funneling them into the Smmp or the Sweep standard forms so they can start submitting that data and it has a place to live. Next slide. So I'm going to walk you through kind of how we broke down our forms, or as ReTRAC titles them, surveys, in terms of the overall standard. So our first one here is Sustainable Materials Management Policy, our Smmp section. And so as you can see by the slide's breakdown on your right, that there's a prerequisite that's involved. So the prerequisite essentially makes sure that you're ticking the boxes that you need to tick. The prerequisite can be achieved over time. So you don't necessarily need to hit your prerequisite right off the gate, and that's not going to prohibit you from filling out your forms and doing your information, because we want you to eventually get to that point. So we don't want to restrict anybody by, creating a prerequisite that's the end all be all. It's more just kind of setting targets that we want you to reach. So as you can see here, the forms are laid out in the local government and industry. So local governments can fill out the forms listed under their category, and industry participants can fill out the forms listed under that category. As you can see, not all of the forms are lined up or applicable to each entity, so the local government or the industry. And so therefore we've just shown, and we used to have numbers that were associated with our credits, and we realized that that was not the best system, because every different facility, every different program is going to have its own kind of unique set of forms that are tailored to them and what they have. You'll see the performance and prescriptive paths here, which is something that we've been building in with Chris, hopefully, in terms of if you wanted to fill out the Smmp performance path, you would simply be filling out a single credit, and that would achieve the overall points of that section. Whereas if you were filling out the Smmp prescriptive path, you would need to do if you were a local government, the 8 credits below that make up that section. Next slide, please. For waste generation and prevention, or WGP, we have similar forms in terms that it's broken out in local government and into industry /hauler/MRF/landfill, so facilities. This is about creating programs and generating data for Sweep, so it really doesn't matter what the entity is. we're still looking for you, even if you are a waste hauler, we're still looking for you to promote sustainable programs or programs that reduce consumption or, community engagement. So even if you're a hauler, you're not just designated necessarily to the hauler section, you will have to do a little bit with the previous forms. Can you please go to the next one? So here you'll see our SWC form, solid waste collection. And this is where it definitely gets complicated, and one of those things that we've really been assessing when building out these forms with Chris and understanding how we can do this. So I would say that we're really trying to track about 6 waste streams, and that would be, MSW, recyclables, organics, C&D, HHW, and bulky. And based on that, is it coming from the residential or the commercial sectors? And then you could have that, or you could be the industry hauler. You collect all 6 of those waste streams for different ones. So it's figuring out how can we get you the information that you need to fill out with seeing as little as everything else as you need to see. So here you can see we kind of broke it out. So this one will be 2 forms as well, which breaks into the local government and the industry forms. And then within those forms, it will break out into further information based on what you collect and whether you collect that for the residential or the commercial side. If you, for instance, are simply an organics hauler, if that's what pops up, I don't want you to see the recyclables. I don't want you to see the MSW. I just want you to have the information for organics. And that's what these forms and these exercises have really been helping us do in terms of understanding how we can make them as targeted to the individual as possible. Next slide, please. In PCR, this is our section, post-collection recovery, that deals with material recovery facilities. So this one's broken out into 3 forms of surveys, which is recycling, C&D, and organics. So again, with this section, you can see that there is a prerequisite that is needed for, doesn't matter what facility is trying to certify. And then you can see we broke it up into, what facility are you? Are you a mixed waste MRF? Are you do you run single stream recycling? Do you run dual stream recycling? Do you do e-waste recycling? Because based on the credits, there's different targets that you need to hit based on the facility that you operate. And this is a way to kind of not double down on any of that information. You can see the boxes that are empty are, credits that don't apply to those facilities. So as you can see, credit 1, for instance, will not apply to composting or organics. And if you had said that you operate one of those facilities, you will not see anything that goes into that credit, and you will simply see the prerequisite and then the PCR credit producing high quality products from recovered organic materials. Again, this is just our way to kind of make it as simple as possible and familiarize people with the forms and the standard. And, once again, if you look at an 120-page document and you say, whoa, how am I going to be able to do this? How much time is this going to take? This will hopefully alleviate any of those stresses because we're trying to lay it out and show you that it's not as complex as it may seem just by the single document. Next slide, please. And then finally here we have our PCD form, post-collection disposal, which deals with landfills. And so this will be, it really doesn't matter who you are. It just depends on where you're disposing of waste. So that landfill will need to be able to hit these targets. And so this form applies to landfills. And this is where the main information that we're looking for out of landfills comes from. So again, if you're simply just a landfill operator and you really have very little to do with the other parts of the operations, you can still fill out the information for this section and move along. Next slide, please. So some helpful features that were, I'm just describing some of the talks that we've had with Chris in building these out and features that we hope to include later on. So first of all, it's these informed calculations. These are the diversion rates. These are, how many tons, how many imports, let's subtract imports from total tons, making it easy and simple kind of within the overall form. Trying to build out this sweep assist system, which basically lets you know when forms need to be updated. One of the things with the sweep credits, they require updates at different stages of their completeness. So some may be every year you need to update it, while others may be, for instance, with a waste characterization study, it would be every 7 years. And you'll kind of get that reminder, work it in, and then on top of it, it will allow you to know if you filled out any information that can be applicable to a credit later on, earlier up, that relies on that information as well. And as Chris said, we will hopefully be merging or working with the MMP in making sure that if information is submitted in the sweep version of forms and it checks off a box for MMP, it will pop up and say, hey, please check out the MMP program, or vice versa. In terms of if something's checked out that will help out sweep, it will also let you know, hey, you're actually eligible for a sweep credit. And here's kind of an easy way to understand what's going on. We'll have the definitions, and again, we need to have a very strong set of definitions that are widely accepted. That's the beauty of working on this standard setting process and working with the committees, because we have so many different inputs from all throughout the industry, kind of giving us their best understanding of what these definitions are. And so it's not just based on geographic region or size, it's really the full spread of it so that we can be confident in the data that we're submitting. And then finally, it's this multi-party collaboration. So as you saw, the sweep standards built up of reciprocal and non-reciprocal credits. A non-reciprocal credit basically means that you need to do it. Nobody else can help you out with it. That is just strictly your entity needs to take care of it. But if it's a reciprocal credit, it doesn't matter if you're the local government or you are, the hauler, because either one of you can fill it out and you'll both get credit for it. And so building in this multi-party collaboration in terms of being able to certify to a set of forms, even if you're not necessarily the one certifying, is a fantastic feature that we can hopefully build in with Chris and the ReTRAC folks. And it will help kind of ease the stress of making sure that each person gets their information in, and that it needs to go through a single person that may be in the local government that isn't well versed at it. Right now we're hoping you can simply give out a code to whoever handles your waste and say, we need this information from you, please type it in, and that information goes into the overall certification of that local government. So those are the features that we've built in or are working on building in at this point. And we look to have a lot more features as well that will just, truly make this as easy of a process for whoever is certifying. And it doesn't matter the facility, because we will make this as streamlined as possible. Next slide, please. So that is the extent of the forms as of right now, and I'd be happy to kind of share with you guys. We've worked on this very, very beta preliminary form that if you want to kind of see where our heads are at, I can show you that too at a later point. Feel free to reach out to me. My email will pop up on a later slide. But let's just end with a little overview of the Sweep Plus pilot. Next slide, please. So the Sweep Plus pilot, based on two phases. The first one's our demonstration phase. So that is really hammering out the technical elements, figuring out, what needs to be addressed so that someone in Phoenix is not going to have some very different issue than someone in New Hampshire, and they're not going to be able to figure it out at all. So the whole idea of the pilot is that we can start implementing what we have, and then we're very aware of any comments we've received during our balloting periods of the standard, of topics that may need to be revisited, and the standard will be reballoted before it goes public. And at that stage will be another chance to kind of just make sure that we have the proper definitions, the proper ground truth, and the proper benchmarks to make sweep as impactful as possible. So then we're looking for 15 local governments, so 5 geographical regions, your Northeast, Southeast, Midwest, Western Pacific. Again, as I said, we're looking to do this because we understand that there's different conditions in all different places in the United States, and therefore we need to make sure that our forms and our standard is able to adapt to those conditions and make sure that it doesn't really discriminate against anybody simply because they can't do it based on their geographic region or size. Again, we'll be using the small, medium, and large for sizes of cities. ReTRAC already uses an urban, suburban, and rural. So that's kind of one of those things that we notice that may be differences. And so how can we make them as common language as possible so that it isn't, there is no confusion when you're switching back from one to the other in this ideal scenario. Then we're looking for 15 industry partners to partner up with them. So that can range from vertically integrated to single focused, right? You can simply operate the landfill, or you can do collection, you can own the transfer station, you can own the landfill, and you can own an organics processing facility. We're looking for everything. We need everything because we understand that all these different situations are completely different. You know, we were talking with like a city in Alaska, and Alaska is going to be vastly different than pretty much anywhere else in the lower 48 in terms of what they're doing. So that is kind of an example of, okay, we really need to tailor this because, you know, they're doing the right things, but we want to make sure that they get included. And just because they're a unique situation, they're not going to be excluded because of this. Next slide, please. So our SWEEP Plus pilot program goals, we want to develop the ground truth for SWEEP criteria. So we're going to resolve and refine criteria and definitions, as I said earlier. We're going to develop practical certification tools and processes. And so this is the calculators that are going into these forms and basically creating a baseline methodology to make sure that data is properly being accounted for. We are building out the certification manual, which will be the tool needed to kind of certify with the standard, which will tell you definitions, calculators, and a case study saying why we're asking for the particular credit, why we want to see something being achieved. And then spread awareness about SWEEP and its impact, promote sustainable materials management. And then collaboration with local colleges and universities is a really great opportunity that we have found slowly just by working with different parties. We work with a group out of Cornell called the Cornell Sustainability Consultants that help us with a lot of our economic data, a lot of our case studies. We have folks at Columbia who help out. We have folks at Dartmouth. We're kind of all around, and it's a great way to get the younger generation involved with the waste management industry and kind of have hands-on training or understanding of what's going on in the process. And I think that's a big issue necessarily with college students and the youth right now, is that, you know, the materials management industry is not necessarily the sexiest of the environmental sectors, and getting the real hands-on training and just data collection through this program is a great way to bridge the gap between college students and local governments to keep them around and keep them interested in the programs. Next slide, please.
Yep.
And then finally, future opportunities and potential collaboration. We are always looking for new members, new committee members, and new pilot projects. So basically, if you're a member, that allows you access to 3 SWEEP committees. It's a small nominal fee that is charged yearly, but it basically allows your input and say, and it allows for collaboration with our other committee members. You can be solely on committee, which is if that is your necessary expertise. Currently, right now, we have a steering committee and a standards committee, but we're looking to build out those committees into technical committees based on particular facilities, particular topics, so that we can get even further in depth into what information needs to be provided in the standard and make sure that it's accurate. So the technical committees, membership's not required. We just want expertise. And then finally, for the pilot program, it's this process that I was explaining to you. We go through a gap analysis. We tell you how your program's doing. We start to talk to industry partners within the area and get them on board. And then from there, we will slowly funnel it into these forms that we're creating and be able to acknowledge you as a leader within the field. We have the shared goals of providing a standardized basis for incentive programs, and that is we want consistency, and we realize that no one size fits all. And then finally, we identify and reward leadership in sustainable materials management, because that's how we're going to bring up the rest, is that we acknowledge and promote those who are doing a good job. And with that, we can really create full market transformation. And that is our goal. And, you know, SWEEP is very excited to be where we are today. And we cannot thank you enough for stopping by and listening to our webinar today. Thank you.
Rob, I don't see any questions coming in right now. Is there a few words you'd like to say to close us out today?
Well, I was actually hoping to ask Chris, you know, that they've been in the field for a few years. they've produced some reports. Those reports have provided data and intelligence to its members. And so I'd be curious to hear about any MMP member who has taken some of the intelligence from the MMP, applied it to their programs, and seen some benefits.
Yeah, yeah, thanks, Rob. I would say getting those case studies and stories is kind of really high on our priority list, in addition to revising the 2019 and 2020, or the survey for 2020. So we're coming up against the end of this calendar year. And so we're working on a whole bunch of things at different times. So I don't have as many actual case studies as I'd love at this point, but I know because we were following up with the municipalities last year after their reporting, and one of them had run into some challenges with their diversion rate. And I won't say which city, but they were saying that the analytical report was wrong because it wasn't matching up with the diversion rate calculations that they'd been doing traditionally within their agency. And so, of course, we took that very seriously and started making sure that everything was working correctly on our end in the MMP. And it turned out that that they had been calculating their diversion rate incorrectly for a number of years. And so they actually thanked us for kind of bringing this to their attention, and they adjusted it and kind of made those changes internally going forward to have it be aligned with the MMP, but also be more accurate. So I don't think it was drastically off, but it was definitely something that even when you start using these common systems, it's that double check. It's that that test to see, okay, well, is this falling along with the standards that you would expect? And hopefully we'll get more of those insights from communities that are implementing some of the recommendations that are being made within the MMP. As I mentioned earlier, hopefully we'll have municipalities that might not have been tracking set out rates before and begin tracking it in a future year, and being able to capture that information in the MMP and analyze it to see, how beneficial this has been across the board is one of our exciting opportunities, and I'm looking forward to that. So.
Thanks a lot, Chris. Yeah, tracking program effectiveness and cost effectiveness clearly is going to be of increasing importance as demands increase for sustainability actions on the part of municipalities. With regard to the finding that the diversion rate had been miscalculated, the HDR did a very interesting study on behalf of Montgomery County, and they analyzed about a half dozen programs, and they found in some cases very significant variance between the programs, what they were actually reporting and what a consistent methodology showed. In some cases, some municipalities had diversion rates several points higher than they were reporting, and in other cases, several points lower, depending upon what was included in the numerator and the denominator. And that's one of the goals of SWEEP, is to have consistent reporting, so that when when a SWEEP certified entity reports a diversion rate, that it's apples to apples, as opposed to some private rate, which hides a lot of discrepancies in the calculation methods. Jill, did you want to just spend a couple minutes talking about the next webinar, which is coming up in about a month?
Sure. Yeah. On November 10th, we have our next webinar. Will be held at 10 a.m. Pacific time. We're going to be talking about waste characterizations, and I don't remember the number of the SWEEP credit. I'll let you speak about that, Rob, but we will be having guests from the city of Los Angeles and NASA speaking about waste characterizations and the use of data and reporting from all the great programs that are going on through the club.
Yep, this is waste characterization is a prerequisite in SWEEP. It doesn't have to be the prerequisite does not require a new waste characterization, but it does require one. And new waste characterizations can get you almost 2/3 of the way. It can contribute to enough points to get you 2/3 of the way to certification. So we're putting a lot of emphasis on collecting the correct data. We recognize that this is a dirty and sometimes difficult to justify task. We're looking at ways that regional collection of waste data, say at a regional landfill where the cost can be borne by multiple users of that landfill, as opposed to requiring each individual jurisdiction to have a waste characterization study. So, just to follow on Will's excellent presentation, the point that he kept hammering home, the point of SWEEP is to make it easy and effective to manage your sustainable materials management program through the SWEEP platform. So it's going to be very exciting to hear from the ground truth, if you will, of Los Angeles and what they've been doing with their data. I think one of the biggest impediments to them rolling out their franchise system was seriously incomplete data sources in a number of the franchise areas, causing missed pickups, et cetera. And now that some of that dust is settled, it looks like things are much more on track. But it does show the importance of having good current information, particularly if you want to change the structure of your program. So I think we're pretty much out of time. Jill, did you want to wrap it up? Or
yeah. Thank you so much. Really enjoyed hearing from you, Rob, and Chris, and Will, and joining us at Green Education. We will be, in the next day, you'll be receiving an email. We'd love to get your feedback on the information you received today. And we'll also have a link to the presentation slides.
There was one question, Jill, that was asked that I'd like to answer.
Okay, go ahead.
The question was, is there a timeline for when trade groups or associations will be allowed to join the noted committees directly without needing a proxy voter? And so the answer to that is SWEEP has 3 standards that are being proposed. SWEEP Plus is the standard we're currently working on. As a leadership standard, we're using the non-ANS consensus leadership standard process. SWEEP will be, we're seeking American National Standard designation. And so trade associations will be allowed to participate directly in that process. I expect that we will be launching the process probably in Q1, Q2 next year. Once we get sort of the SWEEP pilot going and we begin building the SWEEP committees. And so we look forward to working with the experienced and dedicated members of the trade associations to develop the SWEEP standard, which will be focusing on the middle 2 quartiles of the market. So I appreciate your patience in staying around, but I thought that was a very important question to answer.